is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 277. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him E. Sitting here on a Sunday, beautiful Austin, Texas. How was your Christmas, my friend?
Oh, solid, man. You were there,
For a little bit, yeah.
Felt a little rushed this year, felt like we didn't get the food in on time because we were darting, and we prioritized darts over food, water, sustenance, sleep. So I definitely felt a little rushed. I forgot to cook my tofurkey. I bought this nice tofurkey for us, and totally forgot it in the fridge. Tom forgot the meats, so you guys had to eat fajita meat, and
it wasn't bad.
Yeah, I just
a little pulled
like
pork
food,
there.
Food was a little rushed. Food was a little rushed, in my opinion. But other than that, really fun day. Got screwed on the bets, as we have been all year long here. But
Bobby Portis.
Don't worry, we're getting them out of the way now, y'all. We will be getting hot once the MLS season comes back. Getting the stinkers out of the way now. But I hope everyone had a really nice Christmas and got to enjoy some time with friends, family, whoever you were, hanging out with, foes, I guess you could throw in there as well. But it was a good day, man. I can't complain.
Well, shit, dude. I appreciate you. I'm gonna reveal this to the world. You did, you've got me beat in darts more often than not, and that may be putting it nicely. The fact you didn't bring up that you beat me in darts left-handed, I appreciate that.
Hey, you're welcome.
Nice Christmas gift.
Yeah, I had to close out with the righty. A little,
you did.
A little ambidextrous there, but yeah, that was fun.
Oh, well, we hope everybody listening, tuning in here had a great Christmas. Of course, with the flurry of live streams we had in the last 2 weeks or so, a lot of this is just kind of cleaning up some of the signings, the moves that have been made, checking in, updating some rumors. We do have a new rumor that popped since we last convened on Tuesday's live stream here, E. So we'll get through all of the Austin FC news of the week here. Before we get into all that, just want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that you can support the show financially by downloading the audio versions of our episodes wherever you get those podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, toggle on auto downloads. That'll support us going forward, and you don't have to think about it again. You can go the extra mile, rate and review the show wherever you get those podcasts. And if you are watching on our YouTube channel, hitting the subscribe button does help us grow the show. You can also hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, you're on episode 277. Hit the thumbs up, like the video. Help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords. Atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. Look, New Year's this week, E. So we do hope everybody's going to have a happy and safe New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But if you're thinking about, some of the resolutions, right? If you're somebody that partakes in the New Year's resolutions, as an easy one is hitting the thumbs up, the like button on every North End episode next year. I think that's one it's very easy to complete and hold yourself to.
Yeah, just check it off the list. You get that momentum building.
Exactly. So, E, just real quick, right? If anybody didn't or maybe tuned out the Austin FC world over the last week for the Christmas holiday, Austin did acquire Joseph Rosales, the, of course, multi-positional Joseph Rosales, according to the team. We had our live stream when that trade, that acquisition was officially announced on Tuesday. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the, 45 plus minutes that we talked about Rosales already?
I think just reiterate that he's a very good player, and it was a good get, and he's going to raise the talent level of this team, and I'm happy about it.
Well, and I think the one thing that I would add to it that I saw, I want to say maybe the next morning, was that Alvaro de la Roca, who is a Honduran reporter, he followed up on the trade, right? We knew that there was a sell-on percentage that the Loons, right, Minnesota United, had negotiated in this trade. And De La Roca reported that Minnesota has retained a 20% sell-on fee if a potential future sale of Rosales away from Austin exceeds $2 million, right? And it was a $1.5 million cash trade there. So just sprinkling some additional details on the Rosales transaction. And of course, man, was signing that new guaranteed contract right through June 29, the end of that 28-29 season, with an option for 29-30. We're probably not looking to flip him right away. So just something to stash in the sicko part of your brain for years down the road.
Yeah, noted. I like the length of the contract too. So it's a good deal, man.
When one of the things that, of course, we and everybody else had to start speculating on when this Rosales rumor was first reported, now, 9-10 days ago by Bogert on that Friday night, was, okay, now we have a logjam of guys who primarily play left back. Of course, Biro can slot in and certainly fancies himself going forward. And we know Rosales, we know the club is not just, right, we know that Rosales plays multiple positions and that the club also views him that way. They did not just acquire Rosales to play left back, but with those three guys, those two and John Kolmanich, it would not be surprising to see one of the two existing Austin FC players to hit the block. And apparently that is exactly what has happened here, because I want to say it was Wednesday, the day after the Rosales acquisition, that Christian Moraes, and Moraes works for Territorio MLS, which, if that is a familiar outlet to any of the North End faithful, that is because Moraes was one of the reporters, and Territorio was one of the outlets that was updating us on the Diego Palacios rumors this past summer. And I know I've reiterated over the last week or two that I do think that Diego Palacios rumor had some serious legs to it, even though the transaction never was never completed. Now Moraes is reporting that Guilherme Biro has been, quote, receiving inquiries from clubs abroad. And that makes sense, man, because I think, right, like you think about the relative obscurity that we plucked Biro from, right? The second division in Brazil, and especially obscure for the American fan base here.
Yep.
I have not been able to find an actual number on what we paid for Guilherme from, I think it was Coritiba, I want to say, is who we bought him from. Sometimes on Transfer Market, right? And we never want to rely 100% on Transfer Market as gospel, but they will have, transfer fees on a player's page for their entire career. And of course, that valuation, right, that they put out there, which again, you should not take as gospel, but is a little reference point that you can use when you're looking at rumors like this. Guilherme Biro has quadrupled his transfer market value in his time here in Austin, and I really doubt that we spent more than like $500,000 on a second division Brazilian guy, and certainly not exceeding $1 million. I think we would have reports if the fee was that high. So let's take that $2 million valuation from Transfer Market, because again, I really don't have an idea of how much you could flip Biro for, whether it was in the league or, again, as Moraes suggests here, clubs abroad. I would think that means going back to South America somewheres. I don't think European clubs are coming calling on our MLS all-star left back there, but I know your emotional reaction was not a good one, because Guilherme Biro is one of, if not your favorite player on the current Austin FC roster. But I guess from a roster build and business perspective, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, if you quadruple your value and you're able to get that type of money back for the guy, then from a business standpoint, it's great business. And once we had that Palacios rumor floating around, it became kind of clear, that maybe Guilherme wasn't part of the long-term plans, because I do think that Palacios would have been an upgrade at the position over Guilherme. Maybe not super long-term, because I know Palacios is a little older than Guilherme at this point, but now with Rosales here, and as you mentioned, that logjam at left back, it becomes difficult to not think that there's a lot of credibility to these rumors. And again, from a business standpoint, if you can make a bunch of money off of this, it's good business, because if you have three dudes at the left back position, primarily left back, moving on from one of them makes a lot of sense. I don't know if there's a big market for Kolmanich. Obviously getting Rosales in here, paying what we paid for him to come over here, makes this an interesting little tidbit to go on with this Rosales move. So, of course, I'm upset about it if it comes to fruition. And, we speculated, are we moving to the 5-back? Is this going to signal, Guilherme potentially moving into that third center back position more often, which we know that he struggled with last year. Then you have the emergence of John Bell, who we know is left-footed, can play on that side over there in that third center back position as well. And it becomes a little interesting to see what the future holds for Guilherme here. And I'm not the only one who, loves this dude, the way that he plays, the intensity, the passion that he has for the game, his willingness to throw it to the fire every single time he goes out there. But he's not a perfect player for sure. And if you're able to move on to him and get a nice little profit, man, it's hard to argue with it. And this is part of, this is part of what it is, man. This is the business aspect, the business side of this. They're running a business. They're running this club. You want to be successful, but that also takes getting money in, moving guys on, making a profit off of them. And it seems like I'm kind of resigned to the fact that this is happening with Guilherme, just given, the Palacios rumor that we saw earlier. Now the Rosales get, where are we going to have, what are you going to do with him? You know what I mean? I don't foresee him. I think he's a night in, night out starter in MLS. I really do. Yeah. I think he's that level of quality in this league.
He's proven that already, right?
Yeah, I think that
we joke about the all-star nod, right? He was just kind of there. But he's I feel like at worst he's your average left back.
I would say at worst I think he's probably a little bit above average, honestly.
Sure,
when you see what some of these teams are starting back there. But yeah, man, I just feel like it's coming.
Yeah. Well, I think, and it makes sense. I'm glad you brought up John Bell, because that is something that we heard about the player, right, from Nico Moreno and from other sources talking about John Bell, that he can, not just that left center back slot, but he can also play some left back.
Yep.
So technically now we've got 4 guys that are, and if you want to include John Gallagher, who's a pretty good left back himself, there's 5 of them.
Yep.
So, and right, like with the sale, I'm pretty sure you would be, let's say you sell him for $2 million. Mm-hmm. Right. We don't know the initial transfer fee, the agreement between the two clubs when Biro was first acquired, but I'm fairly certain a $2 million sale would net us some GAM. Again, I think you have to recoup that initial transfer fee. And then potentially I'd have to go brush up on my CBA language here, but like, I think potentially his salaries as well to this point. And I'm not sure, I don't recall off the top of my head how that's affected by him signing a second contract, right? Because Biro is on a contract extension here. But that, again, I think a sale makes even more sense if we are going to be able to convert some of this potential transfer fee into GAM because of the moves we just made. And with some of the other tidbits that we're going to touch on here today, I think it makes even more sense to be selling almost whoever you can to try to get some GAM back. And again, reminder for those listening, you can convert a maximum of $3 million in outbound transfer fees to GAM per season. So that's where, like, if you sold a Danny Pereira for $3 million, then it doesn't make that much sense to sell anybody else because you can only convert that. Obviously, the club can take that additional cash from other sales, but in terms of the trying to acquire GAM from those transactions, it is that $3 million cap. But if we're not going to move Owen Wolf or Danny Pereira this year, then the acquisitions that we have made, Biro certainly makes the most sense. And I think to your point, right, he probably garners a bigger number on the transfer market compared to Jean Kolmanich. Mm-hmm. And for good reason.
Yeah.
Right? They're very different players.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, maybe my last, bit of hopium here that this doesn't happen because of my affinity for Guilherme is what our plans are with Rosales. We know that Minnesota plays a very different style than we do. And bringing up Rosales' ability to move around the field, move around the pitch, play some midfield and stuff. Again, formationally, what are we going to look like? We've hinted at and speculated that some schematic changes might be coming, some formational changes might be coming. How does Rosales fit into that puzzle? Are you trying to primarily put him in a midfield position? Maybe. And in my opinion, that means Guilherme would be retained and tried to be kept unless you're getting some sort of fantastic Godfather offer where you're not going to be able to move on from the guy. So that might just be a little bit of hopium, but I do need to see what we're going to be doing with Rosales. I would say more likely than not starting left back.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
We'll see how it goes.
So Moraes did follow up and said something to be said about Guilherme Biro. Austin understands that the Brazilian is one of the most valuable names in the current squad, and if any club is interested in him, they will need to pay a good amount of money. So again, you would think we've talked about Rodo's outbound moves being maybe one of the more impressive things about his job as the sporting director here in Austin, and that would fit with his track record so far. If he was, putting out a very high price tag for a team to come pry a guy like Biro off of us. And I know you were talking about some hopium a moment ago. Let me pour some cold water on that, because Guilherme Biro's agent, and then this was reposted by Guilherme on his Instagram story. This was the same day as the Moraes tweet, kind of starting this rumor or letting us know that there are talks being had with clubs abroad. And of course, you got a Portuguese caption here, Biro, his wife, and his agent, but pretty sure this is a decent translation, at least for here in the North. And this says, yesterday, it got late with Biro and his wife, but it's great that they came and were able to plan for the future. May God bless us. And I don't know, man, on the same day that those rumors dropped, that sure sounds like they are talking about those options and what the next steps are away from Austin FC. So I think, to your point earlier, being resigned to this being the likely outcome for Guilherme Biro, it's really hard for me to disagree.
Yeah, especially when you see that, man. That is pretty telling right there, And I think we mentioned it on the last live stream and talked about how he's gotten better ever since he got here. He's improved and continues his trajectory. And if he's able to find something that's a good fit for him and his family, of course, I'd be upset. I wouldn't be able to watch my favorite player here in Austin. But it's hard to be, mad at a dude for chasing his career goals and improving and getting better and getting that bag, as the kids like to say. So, again, my hopium is definitely far-fetched in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
it's waning.
that is pretty telling. And we knew once we saw these guys coming in here that there was going to be more moves, likely departures. We talked about potentially Danny Owen being moved. Didn't feel very confident about the Owen departure. Maybe some Danny stuff floating around there, but we knew someone was going to be going, So it's looking like Guilherme.
Well, I think ultimately, from a club perspective, if we don't even have to take our emotions out of it, because of course, when we lose one of our favorite players, or we think we're going to, that puts a damper on the spirits. But wouldn't this be the first example of Austin buying a player from a lower league and turning them around for a profit if it does come to pass? Romagna, right? I don't remember what, if anything, we paid to acquire him initially before that expansion season, right? But we were all surprised by the $750,000 we got back for him, given his tenure here in Austin. I think that's the closest thing, because Seba, we paid for him, and I know there was a profit on the back end, but we didn't see any GAM from that. Buka, almost recouped the entire fee, but this is the first one where it's Biro was a project again, right? And plucking him out of obscurity, as I said earlier, that feels like it feels like a fair thing to say, fair way to categorize that acquisition. And if you could sell him for $2 million plus here, just using that transfer market number as a baseline, and the Moraes tweet saying Austin values the player highly and is not going to let him go easily.
Yeah. I
think that is, especially for the South American continent, where a lot of U22s that come from outside of the league, right? You see a lot of those domestics, a Jack McGlynn, right? Diego Luna. We've talked about maybe getting Owen Wolf on a U22 deal, but there are a ton of those U22 guys that come from South America.
Yep.
And I know Biro was never on a U22 deal, but if we put that example out there of being able to bring in young South American talent, right? 2-3 years, development, boom, send you back, nice payday for you. Because remember, those transactions, these players from the MLS CBA are entitled to 10% of those fees. So Rosales, dude, quick $150K on that trade last week, right? So like it is also it is a benefit to these players typically when these moves happen. It's not just for their career, it's also a financial gain in the transaction. So it feels like this would be good for all parties involved, absent, our hearts.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I wouldn't be too hurt to see my boy advance in his career. 25 years old, his prime is ahead of him. You know what I mean? He hasn't hit his prime yet. So, like, you're going to get a good player if you move on from whoever's sniffing around here at Guilherme.
Yeah, and you turn those FOT mob notifications on for Biro and his new squad, and you keep up with our buddy going forward. So another rumor that has popped over the last weekend change, Ian, we did touch on this momentarily on the Rosales live stream, but was that Tadeo Allende rumor that Austin FC had expressed interest in acquiring the winger, right? Allende spent last year on loan with Inter Miami, winning MLS Cup, 20 total goals between the regular season and the playoffs. And right, he was with Miami on loan from La Liga side Celta de Vigo. So, of course, like the name, especially after what we just watched him do in the postseason, I think it was a record 9 goals en route to that MLS Cup title. That name certainly raises eyebrows immediately in the Austin FC community when this rumor comes through. But we've had other outlets follow up on this throughout the week. Apparently, Celta de Vigo has a $10 million price tag set for Allende, who I believe his contract is up. His loan is up at the end of this month with Miami, but I'm not quite sure his contract situation with Celta de Vigo. But what we do know is that there are reported offers from both Inter Miami and River Plate. So you think about competing offers against those two teams. And to be clear, there has been no concrete report of Austin making an offer, just that they have expressed interest in acquiring the player. And if there is a $10 million price tag in a bidding war between Miami and River Plate, we're probably out. And if we aren't, dude, then I don't like it, because absent a loan that could keep him on a TAM deal, I'd be fine with that. But if we're going to fill that third DP slot, I don't want it to be a winger who very much, just like our two strikers that are DPs, need service. And we still don't have somebody to get them that. And right, like if Roto's going to come out here and sell us on Owen Wolf being the 10 of the future for us in FC, or at least the near future, then I'll buy into that. But I still don't want to use that slot on a guy like Tadeo Allende. So I imagine Austin FC is out of the picture here. But we'll keep our eyes on it, of course. And just, again, another small twist in the last 14 days or so that has just been an absolute rush. I can't believe that stream, the Rosales stream, was only 5 days ago.
Nuts. This is, I don't want to say that this is a bit of a trap, but I think you'd be setting yourself up for disappointment if you brought in Allende, paid a ton of money for him, and put him in that third DP slot. And I don't say that because I don't think he's a talented player. He is absolutely a talented player. Obviously got super, super hot in the playoffs there this last season. 24 goals over 54 comps for Miami. But again, he doesn't, that positional need that we are looking at, you're not getting the ball from Messi now. You know what I mean? You're not getting the ball from Sergio Busquets now. Like those are avenues that are not open to you if you come here to Austin. And I think the fan base would be holding him to that standard that he
rightfully so, right?
That he stamped last year with Miami.
Yeah.
And it would be hard to translate that here in Austin, given how we look, given how we play. Our style, that is not a very, high octane offense, whereas Miami is, as high octane
offense.
As high octane as it comes. So I think that this would be setting us up for some real disappointment if you matched one of those big offers, really made a splash move to get this dude. And again, that's not because I don't understand that he's a super talent. He's definitely a very good player, and I really enjoyed watching him in the playoffs this last season. But it just screams disappointment to me. If you pay that much money for him, put him in that third DP slot, and then, we're talking about BV, Uzuni, and Allende up there. And on paper, that sounds good, looks great. But those guys are not distributors. 2 assists for Allende last year, and we know that Uzuni and BV are guys who just have to have the ball at their foot to be effective. So I do not want this to happen. And if we're positioning for some leverage elsewhere, then great. But I do not want to get into a bidding war with either of those clubs. And I think he's a better fit for either of those teams than he is with Austin.
When you mentioned, right, we talked about Myrto Uzuni there is another guy who needs some service, and Uzuni actually giving an interview to what I think the outlet is Ideal over there in Spain. And so, of course, this is, right, in Spanish. You go and hit the Google Translate button, and you can pick up on some of the things that he's talking about here. And, like, I'd say a lot of this, is just, like, kind of your typical athlete, especially like in the MLS world, right? Your DP that comes from abroad and struggles a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like some of the traditional things you hear from players like that, right? It's like, oh, it's my first year living outside of Europe or outside of South America, yada yada, right? Or that the style of play is different here in the States compared to what he's been used to his whole life. He also said that part of his mind was still in Granada, and like, in a vacuum, I don't like to hear that. Why are you thinking about your old team? But then when you read through the rest, it's like he's not just saying that. He might not even be saying that about soccer at all, because he revealed that his wife and his kid were still not able to come live in Austin last season. And that is something that I don't remember where I picked up the idea that they had finally made it over here. But I certainly had it in my mind that his family was able to join him, midway or later in the season here in Austin. And that's not the case. He then adds that his wife and their newborn they were living in the same apartment they had been renting in Granada before we transferred him to Austin last offseason. So he went on to say that they are coming over here to live permanently in Austin with him in March, which great for him, right? And anything that can happen that can get him more comfortable here in Austin is a good thing. But that also, right, if they're planning to come here as permanent residents in March, that doesn't sound like a guy who's on the block at all.
Yep.
And, I am still of the mind that it would be better for all parties involved if he was moved on this offseason. But I think I said after that LAFC loss, when I made that proclamation here in the North End, I also said, I don't think that's the most likely outcome. And this would certainly point us back in that direction. And so I think I guess my biggest takeaway from this, is that he sounds like a guy who expects to be in Austin next season. And I'm hoping that our friend David Goss, is the savant that we perceive him to be, and that the Goss theorem hits Uzuni harder than any other player in league history. And right, there is also, we've talked about this before, there's a track record with this same player of doing something similar when he got to Granada. First season disappointing, second season La Liga 2 Golden Boot. So I'm not putting in the call for a fucking Golden Boot, but double-digit goals would be nice.
Absolutely, and when this, when everything went down, obviously the frustrations with Uzuni and the PK and the disaster that the PKs were, you know what I mean? Did that make this entire experiment a failure? If you look at Austin's season in totality, right, you get the 6th seed, you make the playoffs, you play a team it's much better than you, were deservedly lost to that superior club.
Would not have been a 3rd seed if they had that roster all season.
Absolutely. And then, you're in the Open Cup final. He has the very disappointing PK in there. And that kind of lingers and stays with you as a fan, because you're like, this is our, $11 million man that we brought in here. This is what you're supposed to be doing for us. And when that type of stuff happens, that disappointment really sticks with the fan base. So I get that. But when we talked about, I was kind of surprised hearing you say that right after the LAFC loss, knowing you as
very unlike me.
Yes, knowing you and your patience and willingness to see the process be seen through. I found it unlikely that, Roto was going to tuck tail and kind of admit failure with this as well and be like, oh, it was such a disaster. We got to move on from this. And, I would assume you're taking a loss if you're looking at any sort of transfer with him and anything like that on the table. But to see that, his family was over there, obviously the transition coming over to here to America, how much different it is, the travel. I get all that. And it's just something that we haven't really taken into account. I think I won't speak for you, but I'll say personally, with my expectations with new players coming over here, is the adjustment period, and that it's more likely than not that you're going to struggle with that than it is that you're going to come in and set the fucking world on fire, as we have seen time and time again with a lot of these players that come over here. So I am encouraged by his family potentially coming over here. That'll give him a little bit more of stability, with his, because we only see and think about these dudes when they're out there on the field. They have an entire life outside of this shit that nobody fucking, thinks about, because all we want to do is see him perform and win games for our team here. So I think that'll give him some stability. Wow. With getting his family over here and having them be a part of his life and help that transition be a little bit easier. And, again, I said earlier, I didn't want to judge the BV Uzuni experiment on just 14, 15 games, because that's another thing that has to be taken into account. They didn't really have a real adjustment period together. Didn't have any preseason training camp together and stuff like that. So they still need some time to try to figure this out. And what's the alternative, right? You move on from them. Are you going to get a domestic DP who's very familiar with the MLS and has already been here and established? Those guys are hard to find. So are you going to roll the dice again, go out and spend on another dude who was setting some league on fire over there in Europe and try to run this back? I don't know if I prefer that alternative. And maybe that's just the devil, is a bit better. But I'm excited for Uzuni to try to change some sentiments, change some opinions here next year. And it seems very likely that he is not going to be moved at this point in time with this type of news coming through here.
Well, and that's, if that's the case, man, then we're backing him, right?
Of course. You're wearing the colors. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wearing the colors. And, I thought, and to your point about the Granada thing, and I'm also with that.
Well, and I would also say, I think this headline, I'm pretty sure this "y volveré algún día como jugador" means I'll return to Granada as a player one day.
Oh.
So maybe it's not 100% out of his mind.
Yeah.
I would love to see an interview here in a month or two saying I'm 100% focused on fucking Austin.
Yeah.
Because that did, when I first saw the headline and translate, I was like, oh boy. But you go through the whole thing and you see it's a little bit different.
It seems like he's holding a bit of resentment towards the club. You know what I mean? He talked about some potential sales that Granada wasn't willing to negotiate his fee on. You know what I mean? And that kind of seemed like lingering and stuff like that. And that's something that I feel like you got to let go and move on from, because we paid the sticker price for you, the MSRP, we did. So we wanted you here. We got you here. So moving on from that is something that I hope he's able to do as well. Yeah, man. Again, he needs some more help around him. Is it as dire as we fucking threw Seba to the wolves with the talent level of this team when Seba was in his last season? Absolutely not. But this is a guy who needs someone who is consistently able to get him the ball in advantageous situations. So building up the roster around him is something that needs to be done, and that's on the front office. If you want to make this work, if you really want to make this work and you're pushing your chips in here and you're saying, we're not admitting defeat on signing Myrto and paying that full sticker price for him, then you're going to have to spend elsewhere as well to make sure that he can play up to the best of his abilities.
Yep. 100% agree there. And speaking of some of those additions, man, potential additions rather, I'm not so sure we're going 2-4 because of our buddy Tommy Scoops. And you got to keep in mind even with a guy like Tom, right? He's maybe the most connected, right, at the league level, certainly the league office level, in terms of your national reporting roster there. But they don't, even Tom does not know everything about every front office. But now twice, once on Soccer Wise, and then again in Tom's piece, I want to say that he posted on Friday at The Athletic, This is just a minor blurb of what was a much longer article, but it says, who has money and roster space to burn? And the text reads, the teams with key top of the roster flexibility, plus where they're looking to spend those resources, include Miami, DP attacker, Toronto, DP number 9, San Jose, DP number 10, Dallas, DP number 10, DC United has 2 open DP slots and needs to keep adding quality wherever it can. You don't have to be Bogert to know that one. But then it says Austin, DP attacker. And this is again, I also mentioned Austin looking to fill their DP slot on Soccer Wise early last week, mentions it again here in this article. So if Tom does have some insight, some insider knowledge about what Austin is targeting here with their special roster slots, he is sure pointing us back in the direction of filling that designated player slot left vacant by the Osman Bukhari sale. And I got to tell you, man, if that is the case, I would love that to say, just like San Jose's does and FC Dallas's does, DP number 10. I don't think we're left scratching our head with where we need to add another DP, because DP attacker fits Brandon Vasquez and Myrto Uzuni. Mm-hmm. And like the fact, and we got Jaden Nelson. So like, do I want more wing upgrades at the winger position? Yes, I do. But if we're going DP, it's got to be a chance creator. It fucking has to be, man. And I do not know how you're going to, again, I'm creating a whole lot out of very little here, but I don't know how going 3-3 makes sense unless it's a DP 10, a true 10. And again, I'm one of definitely hundreds, maybe thousands of Austin FC fans that think that way about this slot if we're going to use it. So I did want to bring that up, man, because again, if there's anybody on the national level of media that we should be combing through those little types of written crumbs there, it is Tom Bogert, and that is certainly a crumb.
Yeah, I'm much more inclined to think that Tom Bogert has more insight into Austin's plans for the future than you and I speculating on a 2-4 GAM build. And yeah, I did find that interesting that he did list specifically DP 10s for 2 clubs here, and he put DP attacker for Austin. And I don't even know what that would look like, to be honest with you, because it's
going to be Stuver,
3 strikers,
6 on defense,
nobody in the midfield.
Owen Wolf, 3 strikers, all DPs.
And again, I point back to our style of play, and it's not just this being our style of play in Austin. This is Nico's track record going back to every club that he's been with. Yep. Is that he does not play an aggressive offensive style of game. We are not a flashy team by any means. And are we going to have some flexibility in that? Is Nico willing to grow, expand how we're going to play next season? I think that's going to be telling with what we're going to be targeting here. But again, I'm not going to scoff or be upset at going 3-3, even though I did think we were going 2-4. I'd be totally fine with it, as long as it's a position that I think is going to help the team, more than a DP attacker would.
Yeah.
Quote unquote DP attacker.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I guess that could be a 10, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that could still be a 10. And again, TAM money too. We got to see what's up with this TAM.
Mm-hmm. And who it's being assigned to, right? Is Joseph Rosales getting some of that? Is it, who else? Maybe guys who got raises in their contracts, right? Yep. Maybe there's some TAM that is unexpectedly going to be used on somebody that's already on the roster. And as we're talking here, it does jog my memory that I also saw Tom, I want to say about a week ago, in one of these write-ups that he posted to The Athletic. He mentioned Danny Pereira and Danny being on an expiring deal. And he hinted at there being confidence that a new deal would get done, which again, that doesn't guarantee that Danny is not, potentially going to be transferred elsewhere, whether in the league or abroad, but also pointing to the fact that they are working on a contract extension for Danny. And again, I would love to see it. No matter what, something has to get done, because you're 6 months away from potentially being able to lose him for nothing. And that is the one thing you can't do. And I have very high confidence that we would never, ever do that.
Cannot happen. And, if you've listened to the majority of the live streams or all of them, then good on you. And I talked about, Danny potentially hitting that point where it's like, are you a European guy now? Is that happening? You're at the stage of your career where it's like, we've seen development and growth from Danny, but if you compare that to like an Owen, for example, it's night and day in regard to how much Owen has improved as opposed to Danny. And I'm not trying to knock Danny because he has gotten better. And I think with Danny, a lot of the things that we talked about was maturity stuff, decision-making stuff, controlling your temper a little bit better, being there for your team by not getting thrown out of games or accumulating yellow cards the way he has in the past. But he is reaching that point where it's like, I don't know if the European teams that were keeping tabs on him, which we know there were, are clamoring to come get him now. So we'll see how it goes out. I also am of the utmost confidence that we're not going to let him just walk. There's no way. He's either going to be here long-term, in my opinion, which I'm open to. I would welcome that because he is an above average player in this league. We understand the difference this team looks like out in the field when Danny's out there. So another thing that's going to have to get tied up here. We got plenty of more stuff's going to happen with this roster. You got the roster sheets pulled up here on YouTube right now, and we're looking at, one senior spot available and sitting on those 2 buyouts. I know we got to talk about one of these guys that we acquired last season here. There's more to come for sure. There's moves to be made, and we know you're getting a DP or U22. We're not going to go 2-2. You know what I mean? We're definitely not going to be a 2-2. So one of those is coming down the pipeline as well.
One, you go back to thinking about the Biro rumor, dude, like senior slot and international slot would open with that sale. And God, dude, the fact, Besart Savovich is taking up one of our internet. You talk about guys who need Goss theorem to hit. So to your point, right, there's going to be another flurry of moves between now and the beginning of the season, under 2 months now until opening night. And like we mentioned earlier this week, about 2 weeks away from training camp, guys reporting to the Performance Center. The last thing I wanted to touch on here on episode 277 is our buddy Tom Hollick, who we've been going back and forth in the DMs, talking sicko stuff over the last week. And one thing that he asked me and brought up, and I got so excited that I was like, oh, maybe this is right. And then, of course, you look at the press release from the Robert Taylor trade we were thinking about, or Tom brought up, right? That is some outgoing GAM this year that's headed to Inter Miami and helping them afford this, fucking new revamped bullshit they got going on over there. But it was $250K in 2026 GAM. And Tom was asking, what if we buy out Robert Taylor? Do we still have to use that or send that GAM? Unfortunately, I think the answer is yes. That is guaranteed in this trade. $250,000 in GAM, 2026 GAM going to Inter Miami. But there is that conditional $50K for 2027. And we know that Robert Taylor has that option in 2027. So again, I don't expect that conditional $50K to convert to Miami next season, because I would just be shocked if Robert Taylor was on this roster at that current number, et cetera, in 2027. But yeah, unfortunately, Tom, I think we just, we're excitable fans, right? Yeah. So we're trying to turn over every stone. Where can do we leave some GAM under here? You check your pants pockets out of the dryer, do we get a 20 spot in GAM? And I know we were also talking about, free agent salary budget charges related to Christian Espinoza. Dude, we're trying to see how we can circumvent the salary cap and everything. We're plotting over here, dude.
You're doing illegal activities over there?
The sicko DMs. We played some sort of song, the crime song, so we're legally protected. The circumvent the cap song. It's called Aspiration.
Oh, there we go. Sunken cost fallacy for me here with Robert Taylor. It didn't work out. And then, as I talked about with Allende, having some sort of inflated numbers because you played with the greatest player of all time and the most high octane offense we've ever fucking seen in MLS boosted his numbers. But we got nothing from Robbie Taylor last year, man. Absolutely nothing. He had that one garbage goal, a garbage time goal. I don't want to say it was a garbage goal. And, the expectations maybe were a little bit too high, but I think that's what you would have experienced if you're going and spending out on Allende, and then he gets over here and he's not scoring 20 goals in the season. Yeah. You know what I mean? So with Robbie, man, I still maintain and will use this as the stamp on Robert Taylor's tenure here in Austin. If you are not better than Hot Air O'Brien, man, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say.
Yep. No, I'm with it. It's again, right? Like what seems like weekly, maybe even more than weekly now, we've been bringing up these buyouts that, again, like when are they going to happen? Are we really going to buy somebody out in the middle of training camp or leading up to the season? Or are we going to wait on one of those guys to the middle of the year? You know, I'm not sure, but like you said, the one thing that we do know is that more moves are coming. So you keep that notification bell on here on YouTube if you want to join us in those live streams, because more will be coming. And hopefully, not too many sad song intros the rest of this off season. Anything else for you, man, before we shut it down? I know it was a lot of talk for, just a little bit of rumor crumbs there. But this is the time of year we're in, especially now that storm of the last week has passed, right? And now we're waiting on global transfer windows for those international transfers to open up.
Yeah, we'll see. Got to be patient, see how this plays out. More moves are definitely coming. So keep those notifications on. We'll be here.
We will be here. And with that, everybody, we appreciate you tuning in, sticking with us on episode 277 of the North End Podcast. We are back next Sunday with our regularly scheduled episode and a very exciting announcement. So enjoy your week, everybody. Have a happy and safe New Year's, and we'll see you back here on Sunday for another episode. Until then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.